Huh? Well, I think Joni's.
Is it on?
Yes, I'm online.
I'm calling this meeting to order of the Douglas AMA Groundwater User Advisory Council. Today is Wednesday, February 19th, and the time is 1 o'clock. And I'm Jackie Watkins, the chair. With council members present, please introduce themselves.
Ron Bemis.
Aaron Cardona.
And online,
Joni Giacomino.
Joni's online. 4 members present, we have a quorum. Would ADWR staff members please introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Nick Mason. I'm the GUAC coordinator for ADWR.
I'm Madison Moreno. I'm the AMA Establishments Coordinator.
I am Casey Allman, the AMA Establishment Supervisor.
And Anthony Perano, Deputy Counsel with ADWR.
If audience members,
We have ADWR staff online. Melissa?
Yes, I'm Melissa Lopez, Water Resource Specialist with ADWR.
does that conclude the staff? ADWR? Thank you. If members of the audiences want to introduce themselves, you can type your name into the affiliation in the chat box. The other one, the members in the audience, there is a sign-in sheet over on the left side, right side of the thing. And item number 2, Nick will talk about meeting logistics.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some meeting logistics. We ask that all present please keep their phones muted during the meeting. If any members of the public would like to speak to the council, the call to the public will be the time to do so. For those online, please indicate in the chat that you would like to speak, and you will be unmuted. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to ADWR's website and YouTube page once the recording is generated. Presenters, please ask for the next slide when presenting your agenda item. And finally, if you're having any technical difficulties, please contact our help desk. Their contact information can be found on the screen. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you, Nick. Agenda item number 3, management plan details. Casey and Madison.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and Council. Thank you for being here. I will be going over just some quick sections of the management plan. Again, my name is Madison Moreno. I am the AMA Establishments Coordinator. I work closely with the management plan and the establishments. All that entails with it. So I'll be going over the municipal program and conservation programs within it, and a couple of the industrial programs such as mines and feedlots. So I will start with the municipal program. Municipal conservation programs are connected to municipalities such as cities, private water companies, towns, and irrigation districts that deliver water for non-irrigation uses. Think when you turn your faucet on. That's how most people are getting their water. Large providers serve more than 250 acre-feet of water to their customers, and small providers serve less than 200 acre-feet of water to their customers. And there are also small and large untreated municipal providers. The Douglas Active Management Area does not have any untreated municipal providers as of right now. It is included in the management plan if that were to ever happen. Next slide. The conservation programs that we have within the management plan for Douglas, the large providers have an integrated water resource plan. This is a scenario planning program where we are looking at different scenarios for the future. If growth happens in certain areas, where's that supply coming from? How are we going to mitigate that? Only large providers will submit this plan to the department no later than July 1st, 2026, so 6 months before the management plan becomes effective. Just so that we have that plan in place when the conservation program becomes effective. Small providers are not required to submit this plan. However, they are required to minimize waste and maximize efficiency. For more specific requirements of the plan, it can be found in the management plan of section 5-502. All municipal providers are also required to have a lost and unaccounted for water percentage. So large providers, they are required to stay under the 10% of lost water, and small providers are required to stay under 15%. So lost and unaccounted for water could be breaks, leaks, anything like that. And we use that on a 3-year average. So we understand that construction takes time and money. And so we take it on a 3-year average for that compliance status. Next time. The industrial program is for industrial users using a type 1 or a type 2 grandfathered right or a withdrawal permit for industrial use. There are also individual users that are groundwater users, such as turf-related facilities, public right-of-ways, large-scale pooling facilities that are likely receiving their water from municipal water providers, and they are subject to conservation requirements through the municipal conservation program. Their requirements are within municipal chapter, which you can see is 5-507.
So if a contractor is doing construction and they're getting the water from the city of Douglas, then that contractor has to have a conservation plan as part of the city of Douglas's plan?
If they are a customer of the city, so the city is charging them as a customer, the city would be required to report that to the department separately. So say how much they are sending water to for construction use, and that's the requirement.
Yeah, because usually when contractors do it, they get a meter on the line and the city's going to charge them, yes.
Yeah, so we ask for those meter reads and the amount of water that is used for construction. Next time. I will be going over cattle feedlot. The department regulates cattle feedlot operations that annually house and feed an average of 100 or more beef cattle per day. We also have a dairy program as well, specific to dairies. This is specifically going over beef cattle. All cattle feedlots are required to submit a conservation plan by the 6-month date, July 1st, 2026, or within the 180 days after the notification of requirements, whichever is later. So if we have one that pops up after the fact of July 1st, they will have 180 days to submit that plan. The plan must outline water management practices and technologies to maximize water use efficiencies. Next slide, please.
Madison, could I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
What kind of consumption rates do you use for a cow in a feedlot?
That is on this slide right here.
I think it's in the management plan.
Thank you.
Yes, it is also within the management plan. We use drinking requirements, dust control, and other requirements such as feed mixing, anything like that, which comes out to about 30 gallons a day. So we use 30 gallons and we do 30 gallons per head. That's the calculation that we use for that allotment. So there's an allotment based off of your irrigation or your non-irrigation grandfathered right. And you also have an allotment based off of your industrial program cattle feedlot, how many head per day times that 30. You are not supposed to go over either.
And if a new feedlot came into the Douglas AMA, is that an allowed use? Would they have to then they would have to get a permit for withdrawals? for, say, a 200 head feedlot?
They would have to acquire a non-irrigation use. Right,
And if they were drilling a new well, then they'd still have to do the well study.
yes.
And if it was an existing feedlot, and they were using the same well to water the cows as, irrigate, is that an allowed use if they have the withdrawal permits for both uses?
Help me.
You can
help me
look it
out.
up and get back.
Like, help me out with your question here. So they have in the hypothetical, they have an irrigation right and a non-irrigation for the cattle. And they would be able to do that.
Well, under the INA, you only had to have a right for the irrigation, not to water cows. So if that farmer also was watering cows, do they have to have, so when in the process of getting their irrigation grandfathered right, they would also then need to apply for a right for watering the cows, and could they use the same well?
Hi, Anthony Perano, Deputy Counsel here. They would need to acquire a right for each use, and then each use would come with an allotment, and they would have different conservation requirements, of course, between the separate rights. But they conceivably could come from the same well as long as they are being appropriately metered. That's my understanding. Because we have a similar situation where, like a farmer also needs to use their well for their home for domestic use. And, we see those situations a lot, and we're not going to make somebody drill a second well just because they have a second right. We want to work with people and have reasonable solutions. So, yeah, as long as they're appropriately metering, not going over their allotments for each use, then that should be conceivably possible.
Thank you.
They are also, so based off of the two allotments of the 30 gallons per day times the head of cattle, they're also required to have a water conservation plan. And also required to monitor and report their annual usage every year to the department. Next slide, please. I'll be going.
Madison? Yeah, it's probably in the plan and I haven't, and I'm behind times. But who writes the management plan? As a producer, do I have to get an outside consultant to do it, or can I get NRCS to do it, or can I get my neighbor to do it?
Water conservation plan.
Yes. Water conservation.
The water conservation plan should be the water right owner.
Okay.
We ask that it could be, you could have a consultant helping you with that, to help build that plan to be able to have new conservation requirements, to be able to build out new efficiencies. I'd love to do.
I would assume the contents of that plan are captured in
In the management plan.
the, okay, thank you.
That reference is in the previous slide. So, section 6.10. I will say that chapter is a long one, so it's in there. Next slide. All right, I will be going over mining facilities. So we regulate mining facilities that process ores and use or have the potential to use more than 500 acre feet of water per year. So we also, these are big mines, we're thinking. They need to have long-range conservation plans. They need to minimize water use to the extent that's practical, and they need to comply with monitoring and reporting requirements. We understand that there are bigger requirements federally with mines. So there's not too much that we're requiring in a sense of kind of allotments based on that with federal, with that pursuing that.
So the AMA is not prohibiting new mines to come into the area then?
We cannot prohibit new mines, however, they are required to submit documentation to receive non-irrigation rights and permits to be able to drill wells.
Pardon the interruption. It looks like Councilmember Joni, she has a question. You have your hand raised. Go ahead, Joni.
I'm curious as to the allotment, how it was determined. Was it based on usage before COVID or during COVID, or how did you determine the amount usage, the 500 acre foot?
The 500 acre feet is, we have used that that is precedent that we've had for mines across AMAs in the initial and now in Douglas.
So how far past? That's I guess my question. Has it been just recently, or was it prior to COVID, or what?
That 500 acre feet, I'm assuming it was in the third management plan of the initial AMAs. That's when-
So
Okay,
it's something that's used throughout the state.
Yes, it's used
Okay.
for pre-COVID.
okay, thank you.
Madison? I would understand that if I'm going for a mining permit, I would also have to have ADEQ permission as well as EPA permission. And when they require certain water use things,
I am not 100% sure what ADEQ's requirements are in regards to what their water use or their water requirements are. But I'm sure there are water requirements with them.
okay, so there's a lot of coordination involved to get that permit. Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay. Right.
I'm sorry. Joni, did you have another question?
Yeah, I have another question, and I hope I'm not like jumping sections, but we're talking about conservation requirements and mining, and in 6-1102, it talks about for pre-2022 metal mining facilities. And it talks about a deposit, a layer of tailings immediately upslope, et cetera, et cetera. My question is there going to be a required clearance check like they do for septic before it actually goes into operation? Because with septics, at least when I had mine put in, it had to be checked for leakage, et cetera, before it would be passed. Is that going to be required as part of the conservation plan?
For septic tanks in,
No, not septic. I just use that as a comparison. I'm talking about for tailings, for mine tailings. Because it's in, if you go to 6-1102, conservation requirements.
I'm not 100% sure. I can always get back to you on that. I
Okay, great.
don't have the plan in front of me, but I will check into that.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just add, Joni, this is Anthony, Pro Deputy Counsel. I imagine if that is regulated, that may be the Department of Environmental Quality's purview, but we can definitely look into that for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So by January 1st, 2027, an industrial user who uses water at a metal mining facility shall submit the long-range water conservation plan. The plan shall describe an existing design, construction, and operation of the facility, and it shall include evaluation of the use and the last commercially available conservation technology. They must analyze the feasibility of applying conservation practices such as alternate water sources, reducing tailings, minimizing water use for dust suppression, and increasing tailing densities to 55% solids or greater by weight. So we have requirements within this plan, and we are asking them to submit any changes to that plan or any updates to that plan annually.
Madison,
Yes.
it's in your first sentence, you say metal mining, does that mean sand and gravel operation, a mine? Doesn't
Sand-
need doesn't need a water use permit or?
So sand and gravel is a different type of industrial facility covered within the management plan. I was just going over the specific types that goes out.
Thank you.
Next slide. So we have a alternative mining conservation program for metal mines in the management plan. Think of it as a best management practices program. It's any industrial user that uses water at a large scale metal mining, and they be regulated under this program through us by applying using a form provided by us. They can choose from the list of best management practices that we have available on our management plan. And more information can be found in section 6-1104. A list of those best management practices can be found in appendix 6A of the management plan also. We have this program in the initial, or we created this program in the initial AMAs in the 5th management plan, and we saw really great feedback on it, and we thought it was a good idea to bring it in here with concern from you all, the public of mining. Be able to provide those ideas of best management practices to these mines if and when that happens.
So not waiting till our 5th management plan, have it up front.
Exactly. Next slide. Again, mines are required to monitor and report. Every water right user is required to monitor and report. They are required to submit an annual report to the department every year on March 31st. That is their deadline. They are also required to submit multiple criteria: is quantity of water from any water or any source, and the quantity of makeup water from any source, and the tons of ore milled during the calendar year. So the full list of reporting requirements can be found in section 6.11 of the management plan. Our annual reports are also including meter reads, any water that was received by any other rights, or any water that was delivered to any other rights. They're very specific, and we double check them and ask for any additional information if we see anything that's wrong in these reports. Next. If you have any further questions or need any assistance, you could email us at managementplans@azwater.gov or give us a call at 602-771-8585. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. The next agenda item is groundwater wells and pumping 101. Melissa?
Thank you for inviting me to speak to you guys today here at Douglas Guac. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to give a brief overview of groundwater permitting wells, the section here at ADWR. My name is Melissa Lopez, and I'm a water resources specialist. Next slide. So this is our team at Groundwater Permitting and Wells. Stella Murillo is our manager, and Claire Jaramillo is our supervisor. We do have 10 water resource specialists, 2 hydrogeologists, and 1 hydro intern. If you call our section, if you've called us before, there's a good chance that you've already spoken to one of us. Next slide. So what do we do here at Groundwater Permitting and Wells? One of our main tasks is to process notice of intent to drill applications. This can include notice of intent to drill water production wells, geotechnical wells, and environmental wells, along with abandonments. And we did receive over 3,700 NOIs just last year. We typically receive the most applications at this agency, and we have the shortest time frames to process them. Next slide. So those notice of intent to drill applications are processed before any drilling or abandonment can occur. After an NOI is approved, we process the corresponding after filing documents. This can include pump installation reports, drill logs, project completion reports, abandonment completion reports, and notices of well capping. Drillers do have 30 days to submit the drill logs and abandonment completion reports after the work is completed, and landowners have 30 days to submit the pump reports and the project completion reports to us, and 5 days for notices of well capping. We also receive changes of ownership. This is actually the most received after filing document, and it can be submitted on the request to change information form 5571A. It does take us the longest to process, and that's because we do verify all of the information submitted on these forms before we make any ownership changes to the database. Next slide. So what else do? We also do licensing of well drillers, and we provide driller exams. This exam is provided on the second Friday of every month. Drillers do need at least 3 years of experience minimum before applying for a full-time license with us. And they have to have the application and all the requirements submitted to us at least 20 days before they take the exam. And they also have to have a corresponding license with the Arizona Register of Contractors. Next slide. We also maintain a database of all wells of record in Arizona. We currently have over 240,000 wells of record. This is a screenshot from a well registry app. This is an interactive map that members of the public can use to access our, to either find a well on the map and to access the image record and see what documentation has been submitted to us for that well. We also assist the public. We take calls helping people look for a well file, answering questions from drillers, answering questions about the application process. We typically receive about 800 calls a month. Next slide. So Arizona now has 7 active management areas and 3 irrigation non-expansion areas. As on the next slides, I'm going to be focusing on how the application process looks for the AMAs and INAs, compare that to the process for areas outside of the AMAs and INAs, which is represented on this map by that white area. Next slide. So for wells outside both AMAs and INAs, these can be applied for using the notice of intent to drill, deepen, modify, or replace a well application, otherwise known as the 5540. We do use the same application for both exempt and non-exempt wells. Exempt meaning that pumps less than, for 35 gallons per minute or less, and non-exempt is pumping more than 35 gallons per minute. Even though they're outside of the AMA and INAs, they still have to abide by statute that applies to all of the wells in Arizona. So this includes minimum well construction standards. The water must be withdrawn for reasonable and beneficial use. And county approval is needed if the parcel is 5 acres or less and if the well is for domestic use. We just want to make sure that the well is not going to be located within 100 feet of any septic or other hazardous areas. Next slide. So for wells inside the irrigation non-expansion areas, again, both exempt and non-exempt wells can be applied for using the 5540 application, the notice of intent to drill, deepen, modify, or replace. However, only lands with an irrigation authority may be irrigated inside an INA. In statute, irrigation is defined as the use of groundwater on 2 or more acres of land to produce plants or parts of plants for sale or human consumption, or for livestock, range livestock, or poultry. Inside an INA, there is no permit, there's no allotment. However, non-exempt wells must submit annual reports to the AMA section here at the agency. On the left is a small screenshot of the groundwater rights map on our website. You can use this to track whether a parcel has an irrigation authority inside an INA. Next slide. So for exempt wells inside active management areas, again, use the 5540 application to apply for this type of well. Exempt is again meaning 35 gallons per minute or less. However, in addition to the minimum well construction standards of all wells, these wells cannot drill if property is within 100 feet of a designated water provider's water lines. There may only be one exempt well at the same location for the same use. So if you need to drill a second well on a parcel, that second well would have to be a replacement well. And the first well on the parcel would either have to be capped or abandoned. These are exempt for annual reporting, and these are exempt from requiring a groundwater right or a groundwater permit. These wells may not irrigate. Domestic and stock wells are limited to 56 acre-feet per year, and non-stock, non-domestic wells are limited to 10 acre-feet per year. Next slide.
Excuse me, on this slide here, you can only have one well per parcel. Is there a maximum size of a parcel? If somebody had 500 acres, could they have 2 exempt wells?
They would have to be for different water uses, but it is per parcel inside an AMA.
Okay.
And this is specifically for exempt wells. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, next slide. For non-exempt wells inside active management areas, now these wells do require permits. Again, non-exempt is meaning that they are pumping more than 35 gallons per minute. And each permit does have an allotment that is an acre-feet per year. And we do perform a well impact analysis for new wells inside an AMA, along with increases in allotment. Irrigation inside an AMA requires an irrigation grandfathered right. Permits require a groundwater right or a groundwater permit. A groundwater right includes type 1 and type 2 grandfathered rights, irrigation grandfathered right, service area rights, and irrigation district rights. And groundwater permits include dewatering, mineral extraction, hydro tests, general industrial use, etc. And non-exempt wells must measure and report pumpage of groundwater via an annual report to the AMA section.
Could you talk a little bit about the impact analysis?
Yeah, I'm going to get into that on the next slide.
Okay.
Okay. So when performing a well impact analysis, there are 3 things that we look for that are outlined in statute. The first thing we look for is that the new non-exempt well is not going to be impacting any existing surrounding wells. By impacting, we mean that it's not going to be drawing down the water level inside that well by more than 10 feet over 5 years. The second thing we look for, especially in areas of land subsidence, is that this new well is not going to be doing any additional damage to this area. And the third thing that we look for is that for areas of groundwater contamination, we don't want this new well to cause the migration of contaminated groundwater, therefore resulting in decreased groundwater quality in that area. Next slide. So this is an example of a well impact analysis that was performed by our hydros. So they look at the wall construction standards, the and the groundwater levels and the transitivity of that groundwater in an area. And they calculate what the impact radius is going to be for that proposed well. So on this map, that green dot in the middle is the proposed well location, and that red circle is the calculated impact radius. So any wells that are falling inside that impact radius could have their water levels drawn down by 10 feet or more over 5 years. So in a case like this, where we see that a well could be impacted by this proposed new well, we work with the applicant to try to reduce that impact so that these surrounding wells don't have their water drawn down. So that could look like we worked with them to reduce volume. Yeah, to reduce the volume of water that's being withdrawn, the proposed well construction, or they can move the well location so that it's no longer impacting any surrounding wells. The fourth thing is the owner of the impacted well can sign a waiver saying that they are okay with the well being impacted. And we only consider wells that are not owned by the applicant. So if they're impacting their own well, we don't take that into consideration. Next slide. So some quick tips: keep all well records, especially that 55 registration number. Ensure that the well is registered in the landowner's name. If it's not, this can always be fixed with a change of ownership filed with the request to change well information form 5571A. And make sure information in the well files matches any applications you have for groundwater rights filed with the AMA section. Next slide. Any questions? If you think of any questions later, you can always give our section a call.
Thank you, Casey.
Yeah, I had a question here. So is Aaron Cardona phone? So it specifically is just talking about the drilling of a new well. It has nothing to do with deepening existing wells. Is that correct?
The application covered it.
For
Modifying a well.
modifying a well. Let's see.
The application that she referenced do cover the modifications of deepening a well or modifying a well, existing wells.
And then also, this is Jackie, also, if you're replacing an existing non-exempt well, you wouldn't have to do the study if the replacement is within 660 feet of the current well that's being used. I mean, I've read that statute. And for a replacement of an existing well, if it's replaced within the 660 feet, the driller would still have to get a permit, but you wouldn't have to do an impact analysis because you're just replacing that well that maybe the column collapsed or something that you had to replace it.
Any well that's constructed within the state of Arizona needs a notice of intent to drill application and receive authority prior to constructing the well. You're correct. If it's a non-exempt well and is tied to a withdrawal authority, you can replace it as long as it's within 660 feet of the existing well. No impact analysis is required, but that is why it's extremely important that the department's records are up to date so that we can make sure that we're giving that well the accurate historical permitted volume of the original well.
Thank you.
And just for the record, that was Stella Murillo with the Wells Department chiming in there. Thank you so much with that added information, Stella.
Thank you.
I gotta be honest, I didn't understand what she said. It's kind of hard for me to understand what they're saying, but just being honest, Ron's the same way. I can't really understand what she's saying.
On the audio.
And was that just the response to whether or not a well impact analysis would need to be undertaken to deepen an existing well?
Correct.
Stella, can you just give us a quick answer to that question? When deepening an existing non-exempt well, do they need to submit a impact analysis?
If you're deepening an existing well, you do not need an impact analysis. You would only need an impact analysis if it's a non-exempt well and you're increasing the volume. So again, if these are wells that are within an AMA and you're going to replace it, you would need to, you do not need an impact analysis as long as it's within 660 feet of existing well. If you're modifying existing non-exempt well, you still need some type of withdrawal. You still need to apply so that we can give you permission to do the modification and make sure the proposed modification meets the department and the state standard requirements. Any modification or drilling of a well must be done by an Arizona licensed well driller and have the accurate ROC license in order to do that construction, which we determine while we're reviewing the application. Did that help you?
Yes, I think it does.
Thank you. And this is a call to the council. Is there any items that a council member would like to have discussed at the next council meeting?
I'm sorry, Ms. Watkins, I must have missed something on your notes. We are going to do the AMA director, deputy director report first.
Sorry.
No problem.
Hi, my name is Casey Allman. I'm the EMA establishment supervisor. Natalie Mass sends her regrets that she wasn't able to be here today, but she asked me to give a few updates of the going on at the department and subsequent AMAs as well.
Casey, you're very hard to hear. That's much better. Thank you.
So today, after this meeting from 4 to 6, we'll be hosting an annual reporting workshop at the Douglas Visitor Center. We have some of the flyers over there on the table there with the address and everything. So if you've never filed an annual report before, if you were outside of the original Douglas INA boundaries, or if you just need a refresher, feel free to stop by and we can help you out with those annual reports. Annual reports are due on March 31st of each year. It's a really busy time of year for the department, so response times might be a little bit slower than usual if you give us an email or a call, but we'll be sure to get back to you as quickly as we possibly can. We also wanted to announce, even though you definitely already know, the Wilcox AMA was designated on January 8th, 2025. The application deadline for the Wilcox AMA is going to be April 5th, 2026. The first annual reports for Wilcox are due March 31st of next year, 2026. That's to give folks their time to put the measuring devices on their wells if they're using non-exempt wells or if they have applied for some sort of grandfathered right. Next up, we will be hosting a meeting in the Wilcox AMA in April. More details on that will be sent shortly to the stakeholders list. This meeting will include any changes that have been made to the draft management goal given public comment, as well as an application workshop just helping folks fill out their grandfather rights applications. Finally, ADWR is currently tracking a large number of water-related bills that are working their way through the legislature and is working closely with legislators, shareholders, and the governor's office on a number of key initiatives. General updates on the legislative session can be found on the legislative affairs page on our website, and any specific impacts to the Douglas AMA will be communicated at a future GUAC meeting if any changes are made. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Got a couple. So with reference to the reporting, so in the presentation, the previous one, they said switching well ownership takes a very long time. So what are we talking on that? Because I know that I had to submit myself one, and usually it comes through the previous owners, but they didn't receive anything and I haven't received anything. So who do I contact to tell them I haven't got anything?
You would definitely want to contact our wells team for that information. I don't know if Melissa's still on the call for just like a general amount of time it takes for well change of ownership.
Yeah, I'm here. You can give us a call with the well number and we can see if the change of ownership has been received and processed. Right now, we are still processing change of ownerships from December. So it does take the longest for us to process these just because we verify everything. But we don't send anything out to the previous landowner or the new landowner when we process them. So if you want to double check whether it's in process, you can type in your well number either in the well registry app, or you can give us a call and we can look into it.
Okay.
One thing, this is Stella. I'd like to mention that if the well is tied to your irrigation groundwater right authority, or the applicant or the new landowners should have submitted a conveyance application. Wells get transferred pursuant to the conveyance application. The fee in which they pay covers a new certificate and an update records for the wells. If it's just the well, there's nothing tied to it. It is the owner's responsibility, the new owner's responsibility, to submit that application within 30 days of purchasing the property.
Okay. Other questions that I just was wondering, I don't know if this is to call the council or if we can do this, but I was just curious about the current AMA process and the whole applications. I saw that summaries are beginning to be posted, and just what is the general, when can we expect that we'll be getting issued irrigation, the new authorities of how many acres and so on and so forth?
Right. Good question. So like you mentioned, status summaries are being sent out to folks. Basically, what a status summary is, it's a statement of recommendation of irrigable acres for a potential AGFR or AGFR. And then also in that same letter, it's a request for information. So if we are recommending less acres than you applied for, we give you the opportunity to kind of provide us proof of any kind of historical irrigation that may have occurred that wasn't included with your application, or any substantial capital investment that may have occurred. So those are kind of our initial, here's, we're working through your applications, here's what we've come up with. We're not allowed to actually issue any kind of grandfathered rights until April 1st of this year. That's when the 180-day objection period for applications is over. So once folks have the opportunity to object upon applications that are posted on our website on the basis of fact, if they choose to do so, once that's over, then we'll be able to actually issue those grandfather rights.
So April 1, still on board. It's happening.
Yes, sir.
Casey, I assume you're still emailing us a reminder to report our usage each year, as you have done in the past?
Yes, I do believe those annual report notices already went out.
Are out, did you say?
Yeah, they've already been sent out. And then we'll be sending a reminder notice as well.
Okay.
And then Casey, for the next meeting, could you have just a summary of how many acres were irrigated in the INA? And then how many acres, after April 1st, you'll know how many acres are have IGFRs in the AMA, so that we know, what was the savings with the AMA?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely add that to the agenda.
Where's called the council? So, yeah. So yeah, if you could just have a summary, like even maybe a map to show, what was not, if it hadn't been irrigated in 5 years, then it's not going to be irrigated. And then some, if it, if they had substantial capital improvement, then they would.
Right? Yeah, great idea. Thank you.
And yeah, this is called a public fund. Go ahead.
I was curious, to drill a livestock well, is it a regular application, or is there going to be an involved process? And how long should that take approximately?
Melissa, would you be able to answer that question?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Is it going to take a special application to drill a new livestock well of less than 35 gallons a minute?
Oh, less than 35 gallons per minute. Yeah, so for an exempt well, by statute, we have 15 days to process the application. That includes holidays and weekends. But typically, we get it out before 15 days. If there's any issues with the applications, it can take longer. But if there's no issues, then definitely within those 15 days.
Thank you very much. That's related to cost share practices on range improvements. And my next question, if I'm drilling a livestock well, is there a limit to the case diameter? Because we generally drill them at 8 inches cased. Okay. Then okay, then my last question, do I need to contact you if I'm gonna just have a well bailed out?
If you're cleaning out the well, you don't need to contact us. But if you're going to be doing any modification, like removing or replacing any casing, then you do need to submit an application.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joni, did you have any questions online?
Yeah, I was just curious if we could have an update on the progress of the groundwater model. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You know, because they were talking about that early on, how they're building a groundwater model.
Yeah, that's something that we can add to the next GUAC agenda, definitely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
When do we anticipate our next meeting would be?
Roughly early August, would be the next meeting. Yeah, that's my current date right now. It's gonna depend on the venue availability, the availability of the members. But early August to late July is the current target.
Okay.
And before we move to the next agenda item, Nick, just for those online, if they're unable to make it to the workshop, could you maybe just drop a link into the chat where they can find the Zoom link to join that virtually?
Yeah, absolutely. That will be in the chat.
Thank you. And thank you, Chairwoman.
This is time called to the public. Does anyone from the public want to speak? Anyone online? Okay, unless there's an objection, I will adjourn this meeting. Hearing no objections, the meeting is adjourned at 1:52. Thank you.